Welcome. Today we're going to learn how to conjugate verbs into the preterite tense. Now, in order to know what the preterite tense is, we're going to talk a little bit about its uses. The preterite is one of the two past tense in the Spanish language. And you would use the preterite when you're talking about one-time actions or actions completed in a limited period of time, such as I studied in another country for, and you put that duration. That duration is that limited period of time. Okay, with the preterite, there are some trigger words, such as ayer, which means yesterday, anteayer, the day before yesterday, la semana pasada, last week, or el año pasado, last year, de repente, suddenly, un día, one day, or una noche, one night, and etc. You get the pattern. So, with AR verbs, let's go into the verb endings. In the yo form we have a, to form we have aste, the he or she or usted form we have o, we have in the nosotros amos, and aron in the ellos, ustedes. For ER verbs we have iste, yo, imos, and ieron. Now down here in the IR, we have iste, io, imos, and ieron. Yes, ER and IR verbs have the same exact endings. So, let's use some examples of see how we're going to do this. So, for AR verbs, how about we cleaned the house? Right? So, limpiar is our verb, which is an AR verb. We cleaned. So, nosotros limpiamos la casa. If you haven't noticed that the amos from the present is the same as the amos in the preterite, it does not change. It's the one ending. It does not change from present to preterite in the AR verbs. So, you have to learn by context of how it's going to be used. Okay, second one. Jake studied in Mexico for 3 months. So, Jake, our verb is estudiar. So, estudió en México por 3 meses. So we had to use the preterite there because we had a limited period of time, 3 months. He studied there, it's over, it's in the past. It's a completed action. Okay, our next example. What did you buy? ¿Qué compraste? ¿Tú? So, compraste, to form, from the verb comprar. And what did you buy? Bought is a one-time action. It's over and done. Okay, let's do some examples with ER endings. So, she ran on the beach yesterday. Ayer, ella corrió, from the verb correr, ER verb, en la playa. Or another one. The students learned Spanish. Los alumnos, or you can say estudiantes for students. Then we're going to have learned, which comes from the verb aprender. Aprendieron el español. Okay, and now let's do some IR examples. So, I opened the box. So, yo abrí, IR verb from abrir. Yo abrí la caja. And the final example here, IR verbs. is they decided to leave. Ellos decidieron salir. Or you could use irse in that situation. But all these, as you can see, are either one-time actions, they were completed, or they were completed in this limited period of time, and it explains what that time was. Alright? Now we're going to move on to some of the irregulars. Now you may be asking yourself, what about stem changers? Well, stem changers are more rare in the preterite than in the present, but they do still exist. Now, the reason why they're more rare is they only occur in IR verbs. And the only stem changes that you'll see are E to I and O to U. Okay? And lastly, they only take place in the third person. So, if we were to have a chart, in the present, we had these things called boot verbs. And these were when our stem changes took place in all of these forms. However, in the preterite, that changes. It only takes place in these two forms, the el, ella, usted, or the ellos and the ustedes. And we'll do some examples. We're going to use the verb servir, which means to serve. Alright? So, first of all, we're going to say, I serve the appetizers, to kind of give you an example of what it would be normally, and then we'll move on to what it would be with a stem changer. So, to serve, I serve the appetizers. Yo serví los aperitivos. As you can see, there's no stem change. It's exactly how we just take off the IR and add the correct ending. However, with the third person, like he served the appetizers, él sirvió los aperitivos. He served the appetizers. This E right here changes to an I and that third person. So what about you slept all night? So we use the verb dormir, to sleep. So we have tú dormiste por toda la noche. Totally normal, no change. But when we have she slept all night, ella durmió por toda la noche. So those are the only two types of stem changes. E to I, O to U, only occur in IR verbs, and they're only in the third person, which is the el, ella, usted, or the ellos and the ustedes. So like in all tenses in Spanish, there's some irregulars in the preterite tense. I'm going to try to group them together here by their similarities in order to help you remember them. So, the first three that are in a group together are tener, estar, and andar. Now the reason why I put these together is because they all have a UV in the root of the word. And I'll show you what I mean. So, when you want to say, I had, tuve, tuviste, you had, tuvo, he or she had, tuvimos, we had, tuvieron, they had. So, we see the UV in each of those forms. Same thing's going to be similar with estar. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvieron. And for andar, anduve, anduviste, anduvo, anduvimos, anduvieron. Okay, so these all have up here UV. The next category that we have are verbs that have an I in the stem. And these verbs are going to be hacer, querer, or venir. We have hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, and hicieron. Now take note that here in the third person we have a Z instead of the C. That's an irregularity that only takes place in that particular form. In querer we have quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, and quisieron. Then over here in venir we have vine, veniste, vino, venimos, and vinieron. Next category that we have are verbs that have U in the stem, such as poner, poder, and saber. We have puse, pusiste, puso, pusimos, pusieron. Okay, then we have pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, and pudieron. Last ones we have on this category is saber, and it's supe, supiste, supo, supimos, and supieron. Then the last category that we have are verbs that are just totally irregular in the preterite tense. And these verbs are the following. We have decir, which is dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, and dijeron. The other two that are in this category are ser and ir. Now you're wondering why I have them together like this, and that's because they share the same exact conjugations. We have fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, and fueron. Well, you may be saying, okay, if they have the same conjugations, then how are we supposed to determine which is which? Well, one way is by the context of the sentence. We know that ser deals with descriptions, occupation, origin, possession, or time. But time is always used in the imperfect, so that one wouldn't take place of the preterite. Also, we know ir means to go. And in addition to that, we know that whenever you use ir, you always have that personal a afterwards. So like, fui a la tienda, I went to the store, versus fui paciente, I was patient. So, look for this a, and look for the context of the sentence to determine how they're being used. Now, with these irregulars, in order to more confuse our lives, some of them change meanings in the preterite. So, these verbs are querer, no querer, poder, no poder, conocer, and saber. Now, querer means to try to do something. Means you tried it and then it's over. So, no querer means to refuse to do something. No matter what anyone says, you won't do it. You refuse. Poder means to succeed at doing something. Sometimes people explain this as you managed to do something. Okay, no poder means the exact opposite, to fail at doing something. Or as explained by some, is that you didn't manage to do something. Conocer means to meet, like you met a person for the very first time. And then saber, to find out. Like a piece of information about someone, about something. For the very first time you found it out, you didn't know it, and now you do. So, these meanings only take place in these 6 forms. All the other verbs are exactly the same. So if you wanted to use, like I wanted, in terms of the past tense, you would have to use the imperfect. And we'll go into that in the next video.